Good morning, Intersection Church. We are so excited that you are joining us on this beautiful Sunday morning. For the next couple of Sundays, you can find us here on Facebook Live at 10 a.m. You can also check out our social media accounts on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. You can also head over to our website, intersectionchurch.org, and if you feel led to give, you can click on the Give tab and contribute your tithes and offerings. Now let's prepare our hearts and minds for worship and hear a message from Pastor JD.
Good morning, Intersection Church. Whether you're at home, on your couch, in your room, you do not have to be in a sanctuary to give God praise, all right? So we're going to sing today, and I pray that you guys can feel this worship, God. I pray that today you use us, God. I pray that you fill our hearts, God, whether it's at home, God, whether we're out in public, God. I pray that you just take over, God. Go tell it on the mountains, over the hills and every way. Go tell it on the mountains that Jesus Christ is born. Sing, go tell it, and go tell it on the mountains, over the hills and every way. Go tell it on the mountains that Jesus Christ is born. Sing, you made, and you made a way. When our backs were against the walls, and it looked as if it was over, Lord, you made a way. And we're standing here only because you made, sing, you made a way. When our backs were against the walls, and it looked as if it was over, you made a way. And we're standing here only because you moved mountains, you caused walls to fall with your power. You perform miracles. There is nothing that's impossible. And we're standing here only because you made, and you move mountains. You cause walls to fall with your power. You perform miracles. There is nothing that's impossible. And we're standing here only because we were made. And we're standing here only because you made. And we're standing here only because you made. So we'll go tell it on the mountains, over the hills and every way. We'll go tell it on the mountains that Jesus Christ is born. Yeah. That Jesus Christ is born. That Jesus Christ is born. Yeah. That Jesus Christ is born. That Jesus Christ is born. That Jesus Christ is born. We'll go. We'll tell it far and wide. Oh, and we'll go. We'll go far and wide. Tell us where to go, God. Yeah. We'll go far and wide. Yeah. 'Cause you move mountains, yes. Oh, 'cause you move mountains, yes. Oh, yeah. You move mountains, yeah.
Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born, that Jesus Christ is here. He's in your living room, he's in your kitchen, he's in your bedroom. Jesus Christ is here. He's so here, he's so present that we can go to the highest point in Northwest Ohio to proclaim his goodness, his greatness, and how good he's been in our lives. To proclaim that the kingdom of heaven is here. Know that. The kingdom of heaven is the background that we find ourselves in Matthew, and that's where I'm going to come to you today. As you can see, we're a little bit elevated. We're up on this mountain out in Maumee Bay State Park, and we thought it would be fitting, as Jesus spoke on the Sermon on the Mount, that we will come to you today. I'm going to open us up at Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. This is Jesus' first sermon. This is his first time stepping out in the crowd as people followed him, as the crippled, the beggars, all the estranged people from the cities that needed something from God. Jesus found this mountain, and because his heart was moved, he decided to speak out a sermon, and that's where we find ourselves in Matthew chapter 5, where Jesus is introducing the kingdom of heaven. And he says these words in verse 13 through 16, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world." Intersection Church and family, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Church, I come to you today to tell you that we are the city on the hill that Jesus is talking about. You and I, you sitting on your couch. We are the light that people need because we point to the glory of God, and even more so, we reflect the glory of God. And you say, "Pastor, how can we reflect the glory of God?" It makes me think about when I was younger and we would go on winter vacation in school. And after we go on winter vacation, people would come back. I saw all these white people that looked a lot darker than before when I saw them before. And I knew that they didn't get that tan in Ohio. I knew that they went to an environment that made them change, that made them to reflect a different tone, that made them reflect a different look. And that is the same thing when it comes to Jesus. When we allow ourselves to be in the presence of God, and when we can marinate and we can sit and we can pray and we can talk and we can read about him, we can reflect his glory. I'll take you to Exodus 34 and 29. This is something that Moses knew very well of what it looked like to reflect God's glory. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant, and they were afraid to come near him. So Moses would go up to the mountain and get in the presence of God. And so much so, by Moses being in the presence of God, it says that his face became radiant, that there was a light that shone about him. And so when he got down to the people and they would see them, it says that there was so much glory that was reflected off of him that it caused them to tremble. It caused them to have fear. It's like Moses didn't look like that 40 days ago. But this makes us think. And we have to know that Moses wasn't the source of the light, but he reflected the light. He reflected God's glory. Moses, the guy who had a stuttering problem. Moses, the man who was stubborn. Moses, the man who was impulsive, so impulsive that he decided to murder a man. A man who wasn't perfect, a man who had flaws, a man that time after time, when God would call him to do something, he still would fall short. But Moses didn't allow his insecurities, Moses didn't allow his flaws from keeping him and getting into the presence of God. Moses didn't hide away in his stuttering when God was calling him to millions. Moses didn't hide away in his impulsive actions when God was calling him to lead people. Moses didn't hide away even when he was stubborn, even when God showed up to him in glory. He just decided to find a way to get into God's glory, to get into his presence. Today, I want to ask you, with all of your insecurities, with all of the things that have plagued you in your life, with all of the things that you have fallen short from, has it kept you from getting into the presence of God? We are in a national pandemic where fear is running rampant. And so much so people are losing their jobs, people are losing their sanity, and they find themselves thinking different than they did several months ago. They find their life turned upside down. But I want to tell you that the kingdom of heaven works in the upside down world. Because even though Moses had a stutter, God still used him to speak to millions. That's backwards, but that's the way the kingdom of heaven works. That's the way that God works. Although Moses was stubborn, he still allowed Moses to liberate slaves. Even when Moses would stop, he still allowed Moses to go and to lead people. And even though Moses was impulsive, he used a man that would just go and do whatever. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you just went and you would just do things and you had no rhyme or reason why you do it? This is Moses' life, but God still used him to preserve thousands, millions of people. So you say, how can we stand in confidence? Well, just like Moses did. He got in God's presence. When that thing is telling you that you don't want to get up in the morning because you got to handle that problem, you got to learn to get into God's presence. How can we stand out amongst all the truths that are out there today? See, we're in the age of information, where you can go to Google and you can go to Yahoo and you can click in and answer. And there's a lot of people that want to tell you to speak your truth. And there's a lot of people that's talking about truth. But what is the real truth? What makes us stand out and to say, then for us to proclaim that we know what truth is? What is the quality that we have that allows us to be a city that cannot be hidden? It is the glory of God. So I want to give you 3 things of how you can learn how to shake off these insecurities, how you can learn to go about your life. Number 1, you have to get in his presence. Learn to get in his presence. Learn to have quality time with God. See, me and my wife, we like to have and hang out and have good time, but her love language is quality time. When we first got married, I thought quality time was when I could sit on the couch and we could watch a movie together. But I realized quality time was not us just sitting down and watching a movie and not engaging. Quality time to my wife, Chelsea, is, hey, let's talk about life. Let's talk about what happened in our day. Let's actually engage and talk about how we feel and have this quality time. And that's what it means to be present. That's what it means to have a relationship and to have presence with God. He wants to engage with you. And he wants you to get into his presence. He wants you to ask him all the questions. He's not afraid of your questions. He's not afraid of your insecurities. Come to me, all you who are laden and heavy burden. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He's not afraid for you to come into his presence. He actually prefers, because he's wanting to engage, because when you engage with him, you can reflect his glory. Number 2, you need to learn to be salty. As we've seen in here, he said we are the salt of the earth. What good is salt if it loses its flavor? Have you ever had somebody put some chicken in front of you and it looks completely unseasoned? You're like, I saw you, Captain, you had all types of seasoning in there. What is this boring, bland chicken? What is the point of having all these seasonings and the salt if you don't use it? It's the same thing in our life. God has given us, he's called us to be the salt of the earth. He's called us to be the preservers of life. And if we don't use it, what is the point? Many of us are like the people who's not using salt and not using seasonings in their life, and we're not using our gifts that God has given us. And we've lost our flavor. We've lost our excitement. We're afraid to act out on faith because we don't know if God is going to meet us there. But what you have to understand in this moment is that God called us to be the salt of the earth. Salt in this time was used to preserve things. They threw salt on the meat so that it wouldn't spoil. And God calls us the salt. He calls our gifts the salt. So if you don't use the salt that God has given you, it has lost its flavor. And God is using you to preserve. God is using you to keep. He's using you to keep people. But if we don't step out on faith, if we don't get in his presence, he says we might as well just throw it out and allow it to be trampled. What is the point? My third point is be the light. Here he says you cannot be a stand. You cannot be a lamp and then put a bowl over it. Wherever you are today, it's time for you to take the lid off. And the thing I love about this, that God said that you can be a light, but you can find ways to cover up. You can find ways, you can allow fear to cover you up. You can allow the opportunities that overburden you in the day to cover up the light that's within you. The light that God is calling you to reflect. But how do you end up covering your light? I can tell you, because it's pride. You live your life thinking that you're the one with the gifts. You're the source of light, and you're the source of everything, of the accumulation of things that's happened in your life. But God is calling you to be the light, but he's calling you to be the light by reflecting his glory. Pride is the one that says we don't want to step out on faith. Because what if I fail? What if God doesn't meet me there? Then I'm going to look stupid, and I can't look stupid. I can't start that job. I can't go to that class. I can't do the things that I know I need to do. And the Bible says it's sin for you not to do the things that you know you ought to do. But what causes us to hide our light? What causes us to put a bowl over the light that God has called us to? It's pride, church. So fearful of the way that we look, so fearful how others may view us, because like I said, we're in the age of information and consumption, and we see all these things, and we see all these pretty pictures. And we run to these pretty pictures, and we run to the things that make us feel good, but we forget to run to the presence of God, which allows us to reflect his light, which allows us to reflect his glory. So we got to learn how to get into his presence. We got to learn how to be the salt of the earth and use our gifts. And we got to learn how to be the light. That's my challenge to you today. How can I be the city on the hill? You got to think about who Jesus was speaking to. He's talking to lame men. He's talking to sick people. He's talking to beggars. He's talking to people, the estranged, the bottom, the scum of what people would call them. This was his first audience that he had at the Sermon on the Mount. These are the people he's talking to. But he says, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Blessed are those who don't think more highly than themselves, for theirs is the kingdom of the earth. Because I know that I can use them, because they know it's not in their own power to be the light. They know that they want to be in my presence. That's why they were there. It was the poor in spirit. It was the people that couldn't find help from the physicians. They couldn't find help from the people in the city who had. It was the people that they were looking for Jesus as their last stitch effort. Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Are we thinking too highly of ourselves that we don't need to get in God's presence? Are we so fearful of the day that we don't want to get in God's presence? Are we crippled by the opportunities? Are we running to them that this is an opportunity that I can share God's glory? This is an opportunity that I can share God's light. This is an opportunity where I can reflect the very nature of God. Right now, people need to stop hiding in their homes and get out and reflect the glory of God. Stop being keyboard warriors on Facebook and find somebody to talk to. Find someone to Facebook and encourage about what God has done in your life. Find someone to tell the testimony that God has done in your life. Find someone that you can say that I thought that I was nothing, but God used me and he blessed me. And now I can reflect his glory because he shows up time and time again when I meet him, when I become in his presence. That's what God is calling us to. That's the city on the hill. That's the city that is a city of truth. That's the real truth. People in their failures that can be used by God. It's an upside down kingdom. That's what Jesus is telling these people. The way up is down. The way up is down. It's an upside down kingdom. So if you feel like your life has been turned upside down because of this pandemic, if you feel like your life is not in the place that you wanted to be, that's perfect, because this is the place that you can be where you can find yourself in God's presence. He loves the poor in spirit because he knows that's where it is prime for him to show what he can do in their life. The humility that they have. And for those who do have, for those that have been riding the wave of the blessings that they have had and you haven't went to God, I want to challenge you today, even while things are good and next year, when you're at the top of the mountain, to meet with him and to connect with him. Don't wait until you get into the valley moment to turn to him and to seek his face. He's looking for those who are pressing in the good and in the bad. Allow yourself to shine the light of Jesus. Allow yourself to reflect the light of Jesus. Because the first people to do this was the blind men, the lame, the beggars, the estranged. And if they can do it, you can do it. If Moses can do it, you can do it. Apply for the job. Go to the school. Call the person you know you need to call. Take the step you need to take. Start the thing that God has been stirring up in your spirit, but you've been too fearful to walk on faith because you don't know if he's going to meet you there. Push the pride aside and fall into the presence of God, who's going to keep you and preserve you. God, I ask that you just meet the people. Right now, meet them in their homes. Meet them wherever they are, wherever they may be listening to this. God, as they seek your presence, I ask that you allow your glory to shine upon them, so when they walk into rooms and they go to places, that they can reflect your nature. That people can find breakthrough because of who you are. Not by the power that they have, and not by the might that they have, but by you and only you. God, we thank you for your Holy Spirit that leads and guides whenever we trust in the Spirit that can lead and guide us. Teach us to be the light. Amen.